You are watching Political Roundtable with UB. Like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Snap divide, hunger, politics, and the Trump shutdown. In America, food is more than sustenance. It's politics, survival, and power. For over 40 million Americans, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP, is what stands between stability and hunger. But as Washington plunged into a government shutdown, that lifeline was suddenly caught in the storm of partisan warfare, with President Trump at the center of a bitter national debate. The SNAP program, once a bipartisan pillar of the fight against hunger, has become one of the most polarizing issues in American politics.
Want the SNAP program filled, all they have to do is vote for it. All right, have you seen the new lie the Democrats are saying? They're trying to say the SNAP program is going to run out of money because of Republicans. The president can just magically make it appear. Well, he can't. The reason why he was able to take money from the military and be able to fund it was because he took it out of funded programs that the military was having already. There's a lot of different buckets inside the Department of War. The SNAP program is one of its own. It was specifically funded for that. There's no way to take money someplace else and put it there without congressional consent. And keep in mind, October 10th, USDA, which is the U.S. Department of Ag, came out and said that they can't legally transfer funds without congressional consent. So it's not just me saying it, the department is saying it. But you know who also knows this? Is the Democrats. Because if President Trump tried to transfer the funds over there, well, they would throw a fit and say he doesn't have the authority to do it. The Democrats could also reopen part of the government by making that program essential, but they already voted against that too last week. So the Democrats that are saying that he could simply do it with a magic wand, once again, it's a lie. But a lie is sexier than the truth. And when you're in a mess like the Democrats because they can't explain their way out of this one, well, they just got to continue lying. No, in this case, they're caught with their hand in the cookie jar and they know it.
Democrats see it as an essential safety net for working families, seniors, and children struggling in an economy of rising prices and stagnant wages. Republicans view it as a bloated program in need of reform, one that must encourage work, not dependency. When the government shut down, that ideological divide turned from policy debate to real-world crisis. Federal agencies were left scrambling to decide how long SNAP benefits could continue without congressional approval. For millions of Americans who depend on those monthly benefits, the political gridlock in Washington meant empty shelves and growing anxiety. President Trump's decision to press forward with the shutdown, triggered by disputes over government spending and border security, had ripple effects across every sector. Federal employees missed paychecks, small businesses faced uncertainty, and for SNAP recipients the question became, would food assistance stop next? At the White House, Trump defended the move as a stand against wasteful spending and political obstruction. He argued that fiscal responsibility and border control were priorities that outweighed temporary discomfort. For many Republicans, this was an opportunity to reassess how federal dollars were being used, including in programs like SNAP. They emphasized that welfare reform must focus on accountability, stronger work requirements, and reducing long-term dependency.
Hey everyone, well, it is Tuesday night and I am leaving the Capitol after a very long day here. And we just had a meeting with the Democratic leadership of the House and are leaving the Capitol. Republicans did not show up for work again today. The House is closed yet again. This is week 5 of a complete lockout of the House. And of course, it is day 28 of the government shutdown. And as far as we can tell, this Republican leadership doesn't have any plan whatsoever to bring the House back into session. And the president is overseas. They're not negotiating. There is no attempt to try to reopen the government. There are no discussions of a bipartisan plan to fix the healthcare crisis. And yes, there is the continued threat that the president would essentially starve 42 million Americans at the end of the week by not releasing SNAP benefits. Now, I want to explain a couple of things that have happened in the last 24 hours. Namely, we filed legislation during a very momentary pro forma session on the House floor today. It's very strange. Even though the House is locked out, they've been gaveling in and out every several days so that the Speaker can continue to do his own business, even though he's not swearing in Arlita Grijalva, even though he is not working on a bipartisan arrangement to reopen the government and save healthcare and feed Americans. But we were able during that momentary gavel in, gavel out to file legislation. We are calling it the Snap Back Act. This is legislation demanding and requiring that the federal government release SNAP and WIC funds to make sure that Americans can put food on the table on Saturday. It would ensure that if there was a future shutdown in addition to the shutdown, that we would not have a lapse in funding. But let's be real. Let's be honest about what's going on. They are choosing to cut off food assistance to millions of Americans because there is already a contingency fund that is sitting there for this purpose. And there is literally billions of dollars sitting in the federal government for the purpose of ensuring that 42 million Americans, elders, veterans, and families feeding children can put food on the table this weekend, and they are choosing to not appropriate that money. So we are using every tool that we have access to. So this legislation, the Snapback Act, would require that they release those funds, that they could never in the future cut off funds during a lapse, that they would not block the states from putting funding through EBT cards, and that they would reimburse states and tribes who take emergency action in the next several days to shore up our food assistance programs, because we know that many states and tribal communities are looking to see if they can do that, because we're not going to let people starve. That's just not what we are going to do. And I can tell you that in New Mexico, I know our state government is looking at every single option. Our governor and our legislature, who took historic action just a couple of weeks ago to shore up the food system. And we didn't even know this was going to happen. We didn't even know that the Trump administration was going to cut off food assistance. But thank God that they had the foresight to actually take emergency action. So the state is looking at all its options. We have filed this legislation. We have sent letters. We have signed on to other legislation. And today, Democratic attorney generals for states across the country filed a federal lawsuit against the administration that would compel them to release those funds to make sure that SNAP benefits flow by Saturday on November 1st. So we're using every single tool that we have. We're also, as many of you know, we were home over the last week. We spent time with our food banks. We are working with our emergency food providers and our food banks to make sure that there is scaling up of food assistance. We are working on every single front. But, it's tough times out there. I know that you all are scared. It's not clear how this all is going to end, but we showed up for work. We are here fighting the fight here in the halls of Congress. And I want all of you to know that we are here, we are fighting for you, and we're going to make sure that New Mexico and our people are okay. So I am sending you all so much love on this crazy Tuesday night, and I will see you guys on the other side. Bye, everyone.
Democrats saw it differently. They accused the administration of holding working-class families hostage in a political game. House leaders argued that SNAP was being used as a pawn, a bargaining chip in a wider struggle over government, control and moral responsibility. Hunger should never be a political weapon, said one Democratic senator. As the shutdown dragged on, food banks across the country saw record demand. Parents began rationing meals, and grocery stores in low-income areas noticed fewer customers using their EBT cards. For many Americans, the shutdown made one thing painfully clear: politics could reach into their kitchens. Economists warned that halting or delaying SNAP payments would not just hurt families, but also local economies. Each dollar spent in SNAP generates nearly $2 in economic activity, supporting grocery stores, farmers, and transportation networks. Cutting that flow meant real consequences for rural America and urban centers alike. Inside the Capitol, heated exchanges between Republican and Democratic lawmakers mirrored a deeper moral divide. To conservatives, the issue was about restoring dignity through work and personal responsibility. To progressives, it was about protecting vulnerable citizens in uncertain times.
Food assistance for some people.
Gabby Killa tells us who will get SNAP benefits next month and who won't.
Partial relief for Louisiana families in need of food assistance. Governor Jeff Landry signs an emergency order Friday, approving benefits through November for children as well as elderly and disabled people.
The governor, since the legislature is already in special session, he went ahead and he declared a state of emergency within the state of Louisiana, which is within his powers as governor.
For everyone else affected, SNAP benefits will lapse November 1st if the shutdown continues.
Even though those people might not be, elderly or children or disabled, those people still might have members of their household, still might have family members that are depending on those SNAP benefits. And of course, those people as individuals themselves might be below the poverty line.
Louisiana families we spoke with explain how essential the programs are, especially for those already affected by the shutdown.
This is going to be the end of government assistance for people that truly need it.
Well, but that's just the beginning, though, because it's already been a lot of things that's already been affecting, like, everyone in the neighborhood.
My children work hard, take care of their children. Then they got grandchildren they got to take care of.
In the meantime, food banks prepare for an influx of people. And Louisiana families consider what meal times might look like to those not protected by Landry's order.
Without the food stamps, there's going to be very little hot plates on the table.
When they go away, it's going to be a lot of turmoil for people that don't have money to feed themselves. And then looking for a job. The economy is so bad right now when it comes to finding work.
Collins says Landry will need to ask for additional legislative approval for the programs if the federal shutdown extends past November.
And Governor Landry says the emergency stopgap will be paid out of the state's emergency funds.
There was a plan presented by the Republicans today that would fund SNAP on the 1st and would also pay federal workers till the shutdown is completely agreed upon. And the Democrats said, no go. SNAP, you're not getting paid. Federal workers, you're not getting paid because we're not getting anything in return. If they don't get the funding for all of the stuff that they want to send billions to other countries or funding for the illegal healthcare, they would rather you didn't get SNAP and you didn't get paid if you're a federal worker. There's no saying. People are betting how long this shutdown is going to go, and many are betting that it's going to go into the next year, meaning if we don't get this taken care of, there won't be any funding in November nor December. There won't be any paychecks in November and or in December as the Democrats continue to stall progress to ensure those in need get their food stamps and federal workers get paid.
Look, you all, I appreciate this room being full. I'm getting a chance to visit with you in the hallways, but also here. This shows the interest here. I'm going to repeat something Senator Schumer shared, and it goes to Secretary Perdue. This funding for SNAP has never lapsed in the history of the United States. Last shutdown, under President Trump, they found a way to use this money. As a matter of fact, the contingency fund this year was already utilized to pay for staff for SNAP. They already tapped it once. And that plan that Senator Klobuchar talked about, here it is. Why would this magically disappear from the website? And why Speaker Johnson lied to the American people saying, oh, the law does not allow for this to happen? It's bullshit. I'll say it. I come from a small farm. I know the difference of good soil and the bullshit that goes in it, and this is the bullshit. Taking these plans down to try to lie to the American people and justify why it's okay for people to go hungry. 40 million people Plain and simple. 40 million people that are going to miss a meal in the United States of America. And I want to commend every one of my Democratic colleagues that is a co-sponsor of this legislation, and many of us that are co-sponsors of Senator Hawley's legislation, including all of my Republican colleagues. I was asked a question earlier today by one of the journalists about, what's getting in the way of this? Well, President Donald Trump, Secretary Rowlands, and now Leader Thune. He's not allowing a vote on a floor that has bipartisan support, and heck, it could just be a UC. Which Republican's going to stand up and object to their constituents eating? And by the way, while New Mexico is at the top of the list of states that will be impacted per capita of SNAP beneficiaries, Louisiana's in the top 5. Third. I'll remind you the state that the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives is from. I hope his constituents find him. I hope the Republican colleagues, I think Leader Schumer, you shared with us, it's 75 now. 75 House Republicans that have told the press something has to be done to prevent health insurance premiums from doubling. They should come to Washington, D.C. They don't need to wait for the Speaker to invite them. Come down here. Let's get together. If the Speaker doesn't want to get in a room, how about the rest of us get in a room? I'll close with this. Chuck, as I turn this back to you. We had a governor from New Mexico, Bruce King, cattle rancher. And he always used to tell folks, if you can't come up with the solution, sometimes you need to lock them up in a barn until they come up with the solution. Well, Mr. President, come back from jetting around the world, get back to the White House. President Trump said it's up to a president to prevent a shutdown. He said it does not bode well for presidents if there's a shutdown. Well, come on back. Bring everyone back. Let's get this done. But in the meantime, all that needs to happen is for Secretary Rowlands to say, no, we're going to use this fund. We're going to pay people food. Or we're going to pay for this program to get people food. That can happen right now. There doesn't even need to be a vote. But if they want to vote, bring one of these bills up. I'm confident it'll pass the Senate floor. Maybe that'll force House Republicans to come back.
President Trump's stance, firm, unapologetic and combative, reflected the broader Republican narrative that America's welfare system had to evolve or risk collapse under its own weight. Yet, even within the Republican Party, there were quiet concerns. Some lawmakers worried that cutting off SNAP during a shutdown could alienate millions of working-class voters who formed part of Trump's base. Others argued that fiscal conservatism needed to be balanced with compassion, that reform should not translate into hunger. For Democrats, the shutdown became a rallying cry. They framed SNAP as a moral test for the nation, proof of whether America still cared for its most vulnerable. Their narrative focused on families forced to make impossible choices between rent, medication, and food. They pushed for immediate funding, accusing the administration of neglecting human suffering for political leverage. Meanwhile, ordinary Americans found themselves trapped between political philosophies. In Ohio, a mother of 2 described skipping meals so her children could eat. In Texas, a veteran relied on SNAP while waiting for his delayed benefits. And in Mississippi, local churches began distributing free meals, filling the gap left by a frozen federal system. As the shutdown entered its later days, the tension began to ease only after weeks of pressure from advocacy groups, governors, and citizens across party lines. Eventually, a temporary funding measure was passed, allowing SNAP benefits to resume. But the scars remained. For millions, it was a stark reminder of how fragile their access to basic necessities could be when politics takes precedence over people. The debate surrounding SNAP has always been more than an argument over budgets. It's a reflection of America's identity, a struggle between 2 visions of government and society. Republicans emphasize fiscal discipline and the virtues of work. Democrats highlight compassion, equality, and the collective responsibility to ensure no one goes hungry. President Trump's shutdown brought that ideological divide into sharp focus. It exposed the human cost of political brinkmanship and reminded the nation that food security isn't abstract, it's deeply personal. Washington gears up for the next round of budget debates. The SNAP fight continues. One side calling for reform, the other for expansion. But beyond the politics, in homes across America, Families still wait for stability, hoping that the next political storm won't take food off their tables. In the end, SNAP is more than a program. It's a promise that no American, regardless of income, should be left hungry in the world's richest nation. Whether that promise survives depends not on ideology, but on the willingness of leaders to remember the people behind the politics.